Hey guys, my name is Alexander and I'm with Draco, and welcome back to the Invision podcast. And today we're going to be talking about school, a very broad term. Yeah, we're going to go really into depth with everything. This is basically a multi-part series. We're going to be talking a lot about it. It's going to be throughout the whole podcast in general, but today we're really going to be focusing about school. So Draco, what are some experiences that you've had recently with school that you weren't a big fan of, let's say? Maybe some negative experiences or so, some of that.
I've definitely had a lot, but I'll just put in, you know, I'll put it simply. Let's just get let's just get it out of the way. Homework. Like we were just talking before we started, and it's just crazy the amount of homework that we're getting. I actually did a quick Google search too, right? And I was looking at the um basically the homework rights, like the rights
Mhm.
you have to homework in British Columbia. And can you believe that there aren't any rights for homework?
What do you mean about that? Like rights to
As
homework? What does that mean?
as in as in like there's no set like, oh, students can only get a max of, let's say, 2 hours of homework. Like there's no rule on it. There's no rule saying no, teachers can't assign homework on the weekends, etc. And obviously for those who, like, for our listeners, because I was explaining to Oleg off of the recording, I got two assignments to do on the weekend for a class that is my elective, which isn't going on my university application, right? So at first value, you'd be like, oh yeah, they're just normal assignments, right? It's not even going on a uni application. Who cares? No, like this is actual work to be done. And it's not like a little bit of a task that's like, oh, they just call it like it's an actual assignment to be done. I have two assignments. And I was speaking with my teacher and he was like, yeah, it'll just take 30 minutes. I can tell you the first assignment alone took me like at least 45 minutes. And I was really going through it and I made sure I did it properly, but also like really 45 minutes for one assignment. And then I had another assignment to do, and it's due on the weekend. On top of, my core classes, I've got English, I've got math, and I've got my university applications that need to be done, right? Which is a lot of work. Um, and by the way, I'll just throw it in. I just did my math test today and I got 100. So that was
Oh, there you
good.
go.
I,
Congrats, yeah.
Thank you, thank you. But really, yeah, that's been the big experience for me. And it's not even just this year, it's just in general. You can relate to this too, right? Wouldn't you feel that homework is just quite excessive most of the time?
Yeah, homework. Oh my God. Definitely. I feel like at the same time though, we do get or like at least in my school currently, I get time to work on homework during class, you could say, but at the same time it's you get assigned to do work during class, yet on top of that, you get homework assigned to do work at home, even though you're supposed to, I guess be enjoying it. Either you have extracurriculars or do you have work, which is a part-time job or something. Yeah, you do, the same amount of work or even more during your not just off school than actually in school during lessons, which I think is pretty crazy, personally.
Even one more thing too that I'm just like remembering was I was basically having a chat with my English teacher, and I remember my mom, I believe it was like parent teacher night, and my mom obviously signed up, right, to speak with my teachers. And now I'm not going to push a narrative because I'm not quoting my English teacher, but basically at the time I was working two jobs, right? And I don't want, again, I didn't know the words that were used, but I remember basically very broadly that, like my English teacher basically was not found, like, is not happy that I was working two jobs, right? In a sense. Now, again, I don't want to push something that he didn't say, but like from my point of view, it was like as if he was like saying that, like you got to basically quit or you need to find the time because you're not having enough time to English, which is fair enough to say, but also like I'm starting to think like when I look at my English class, and really people can vouch for me in my English class, everything was to be done at home. The reading was to be done at home. We had this like journal entries basically, right? You find a quote, you write, about analyze the literature basically, right? Everything's to be done at home. I mean, he gives you 15 minutes at the start of class, but what is 15 minutes good for? 15 minutes, I could probably read what, like 3 pages, right? Three,
You're a
four
slow reader,
pages.
aren't you?
I am a slow reader. Fun fact too, I got told I was dyslexic in ninth grade, right?
Yeah, I remember
Which
that story.
which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, just to really get back on topic, like it's ridiculous. I'm getting homework, everything to be done at home. And think about it this way too. I'm not just working jobs because I'm working jobs, right? I'm not the only one who's working jobs as a student. Like even though I'm going to school in like in West Van, right, which is known to have like rich people, like millionaires, right? Like you see the people who are pulling up and like they pull up to school in like Benz, Porsche, etc. G wagons, you get what I mean, right? But obviously that doesn't mean they're super duper rich. But what I'm trying to basically say is like it's almost assumed that everyone's parents have money. You know what I mean? Just be like they assume that if you live in West Van, you have money, which I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely middle class, upper middle class for sure, right? Because to survive here, that's basically what you need to be. But
Yeah,
it's not
true.
like I can just throw money. Like it's not like I got 100,000 ready for me. Go get your masters. Fully paid for by my parents. That's
Yeah,
not right. My mom did it.
and s
Did Go ahead.
sorry. And since he expects that everyone has money, he just expects that you wouldn't, since your parents have money, they could provide for you. He wouldn't expect you to be working jobs instead be focused on your education, basically.
Absolutely.
Is that what I'm getting? Okay.
Absolutely. And not just that too. Like I don't think he understands, right? Or maybe okay, we'll put him aside because I don't want to be speaking for him, but also I just want to speak in general. Like you can't just work a job for like 2 hours. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh yeah, I work and then I can come home and do my homework, right? It's like if I need to work, I mean minimum basically like a 6 hour shift.
You get put on, yeah, hours.
Like
I come personally for me, I start school at around maybe 8 or 5, give or take announcements, whatever. And I finish at 2:45. And once I take the bus home, I get home around 3:20. And then my shift starts at 4. So I have to basically rush. I sometimes don't even have time to eat. So then I have to just quickly rush and then walk. Sometimes like a light jog if I really have no time. Then I start work at 4 until 9. And after that, it's like I don't have much time to do any work. And even if I do, then I'll be a bit sleep deprived because I wake up at 6 and the cycle just repeats all over. And
and I
then you
want to
also consider everything else like the gym, consider all the other habits I'm trying to implement. It kind of just gets in the way.
in a sense you can put it that it's like bad time management on our part, right? Or we need to
Yeah.
better manage our time. But really it's ridiculous that like when you think about a grade 12 student should have like up to 2 hours of homework every night. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
6.5 hours at school and you come home and you have to do 2 extra hours. Like people can say, oh yeah, it's just 2 hours. No, throughout the week, 5 times 2 is already 10. That's 10 extra hours outside of school that you're spending on homework, sitting down. And the 2 hours, like how do you equate work to time? You know what I mean? For a teacher, when a teacher makes homework, right? The teacher completely understands the concept because they're the ones making it, right? So to them, they're like, oh yeah, I know exactly how I do this, right? This doesn't, it's whatever. And then if a student doesn't understand it, right? First of all, it's basically their fault that they didn't go and ask, right? Right? They should have been listening, right? That's a whole big thing too. Like, oh, why weren't you paying attention? Okay, just because it goes through my ears doesn't mean my brain completely understands it, right? There are a lot of complex things. And it's not always the easiest to just go and raise your hand to ask the question, right? Because obviously there's the other thing too of like, well, I don't want to seem dumb to my classmates, right? On top of two, like imagine you didn't understand something, right? Sometimes you don't even know the question to ask, right? And I'm not going to be there, raise my hand and go, sorry, I didn't understand anything at all. Can you repeat that? Right. That's just basically like, oh, come on now. I'm not like, I'm going to basically not necessarily get bullied, but even looks, right? Even looks go as far as that, right? So on top of that, I'm coming home 2 hours, right? Like, am I not going to get burnt out too? And the thing is, too, like, what's the limit? Like 2 hours in general or 2 hours per class, even? You know what I mean? Because some days, oh, I got math, English, and music homework, right? It's ridiculous. And then they can always go and say, oh, yeah, you can ask an extension. Half the time, the extension doesn't help because by the time you get the time to do the other one, another class has already put something on top of it, right? Where's social life? Where's the rest balance? Where's the time to like even work? Where's the time to You know what I mean? How do you fit everything in? Eventually it's not even our fault that it's time management. It's just really that we have so much and we get asked to do even more and more and more. And then you feel like you're not even good enough at the end of the day, too, right? That like, oh, why does it take me so long to do this work? You know what I mean? I'm stupid. I should be able to do it faster, right? These are true thoughts that students are going through. I'm sure you can relate, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like I, at a point, like I've just said everything to the point where like literally there's not much else to say. Like that's literally how you feel, right? You just feel so overwhelmed. And if I'm being honest too, because this is a podcast, we can say whatever we want. I really feel like the guidance counselors are not that helpful at all.
No.
Like really. The guidance, I'm sure they know their stuff, but when it comes to actually helping, like I mean, aside from school, maybe you can help me find a school or two, or you can help me with a class timetable. It's not that helpful. Like I'm just gonna speak
Yeah.
because people need to hear our voice. I'm sorry. I'm not saying you're bad at your job, but I'm just saying you weren't helpful. That's me. I'm speaking. If you weren't helpful, that's
Yeah.
true. Maybe I misarticulated a way to get my point across. But if I'm being honest, I really don't feel like it's been helpful at all. And also, I can't just go home and ask my mom and be like, Mom, can you help me? My mom's not a guidance counselor. My mom only knows so much, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, personally though, I totally agree. In my 4 years of high school, I have never ever consulted my guidance counselor. I didn't feel like there was anything really to talk about. I don't think they really helped me out with much. So kind of just either figure everything out on my own or just never talk to them. It's whatever.
I can personally say when I've walked in guidance at both schools, I've come
Yeah.
out probably with less brain cells than I did going in. Really? Because sometimes it's just like I don't know if it's the way I say it, but it makes sense in my head, right? By the time the words come out, maybe it didn't make sense in their head, but I really go in and my question just never gets asked and I just end up leaving and say, "Okay, you know what? I'll just figure it out myself." Right? Like basic questions like, "Oh, can you change my course?" Okay. Right? That's what they're used to. But when I'm saying like, "Okay, what the hell? I got this," eventually it's just like, "Okay, just go seek professional help because the level is just different." You know what I mean? But anyways, not to go on a rant or a tangent, but I really do feel like it's about time people start to hear our perspectives because obviously, yes, this is my point of view, but so many kids can relate to this, right? Even when you're having chats in the halls, everyone's saying the same thing. You know what I mean? We're all agreeing that like really it's a lot as a student. And I think I'm going to transition to the next part and you can definitely take over. But grades, really, there's so much pressure on grades, and grades don't even show anything at the end of the day. Really. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to rant too much, but I'm just going to say my final part and you can take over. But really, I feel like, first of all, you know how easy it is to cheat? Like,
Yeah. I was just about to talk about this. Sorry to interrupt, but it's just like at this point, there's so much pressure on getting good grades, and it feels like the teacher wants students to care so much about grades that they're willing to basically cheat and compromise that grade to get that better grade because they feel like if they don't, they're either a failure or they feel like they're not learning much or they're not internalizing that, I guess, education. So there's definitely that big pressure on grades that makes student wants to cheat to achieve, I guess, what is what's supposed to be good in our society.
and I'm going to say two things. First of all, I've always come into school and tried my best with integrity. I've always like because in the younger grades, obviously grades don't matter as much, right? As compared to like these final years of high school, like really
Yeah,
your grades are getting looked at. So I've always come in and I'm like, look, I just want to learn something. You know what I mean? I want my time to be valuable. I'm not like really, we've both said it. We feel like we're wasting our time at school because I walk out, I go home, and you ready for this big thing? Hey, what did you learn at school today? What did you do at school today? And we go, fuck,
yeah.
nothing. I don't mean to
Every
swear.
every time every time parents ask, your mom asks, hey, honey, how was school today? Yeah, it was all right. Did you learn anything? Okay,
Like,
whatever, whatever.
like I
It's
know
like, yeah,
I know we haven't like I've made a rule not to swear, but really for emphasis, fucking nothing. Nothing. Really. It feels like I go in, I walk out, and I don't understand anything or I didn't learn anything. And I pressed my mute button by accident. Am I talking or no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Sorry, I'm getting too worked up in this. I said I set off recording as well. Like this is the one topic that we're allowed to swear on, just because really there needs to be an emphasis on this because our voices haven't been heard on this. But really, it's getting to a point where it's like I'm wasting my time at school. I've learned more outside of school or taught myself than I have been learning in school. The practicality as well, like really the subject matter is completely off topic. You read the course description and then you actually sit in this classroom and you just go, where's the correlation? It's completely off topic or it had no value at all. And I mean, okay, I can sit there and I obviously have the point of view of like either a business student or like entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, right? But really sometimes like even in English class, I'm not going to become a writer. You should not mark me as if I'm going to pursue writing. You should mark me at least on the basics. You know what I mean? Like grammar, sentence structure, the things that apply to everything. You know what I mean? That's okay. But if you mark me as if I'm taking my master's and I'm trying to become like a writer or journalist, really, at least like that's my experience with my teachers. But I feel like it's a little too much at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. And this podcast, we talk about obviously self-improvement, self-development, and as physical, spiritual intelligence we want to get, we have to focus on, the sole part of business, building finances and those fundamentals. And truly, school doesn't teach you much about, business or I guess really how the economy works at all. So it's really solely up to you to self-educate yourself or to find other, mentors or teachers online to help you with that kind of stuff. Because school may teach you like the basics about taxes and just like sort of the very basic stuff, but it doesn't really go into depth on how to definitely get financial literacy and just be financially free yourself. So it's solely up to you. Try and go out there, find some mentors, just people you can learn from. Definitely. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And really, I think you're like the chances of you really getting and what we call a good teacher is so hard because obviously everyone has different learning styles and the description of a good teacher. But I would just say a good teacher is someone who genuinely cares about the learning, like genuinely cares about the learning and wants the best for their students. And that can be said so broad. I want the best for my student. Like you you can tell how some teachers just have favorites. I think if you're a teacher and you have favorites, like that's already just a dead giveaway of like that's an immediate bias, right? I can see it definitely in a lot of my classes that teachers have biases, and I just want to say like if you're a teacher or you're thinking about being an educator in any sort of way, right? Obviously, you're gonna have role model students, right? And there's a way to say like, okay, guys, so and so did this. Let's see how they did it, right? To teach it, but also to a point, it just becomes like indirectly saying you're not good enough compared to this person, right? Because let's look at human nature. We always compare each other, right? Ourselves to someone else. Oh, I'm not good enough. This person has this person has this. I want this. I want that. I want that, right? And I just feel like teachers really, I'm seeing it in my music class, like always applaud, always praise to this person, right? But my contributions go on and go like on under the radar. I'm not even there. I'm like a ghost. I'm expected to do so much, but the praise or the thanks or whatever is just like I never get that. So then the moment I show like even the little bit of like attitude or like not necessarily attitude, but like the unwillingness to participate or less participation immediately is taken like you know I'm trying to basically paraphrase what happened, but I had an encounter where I was just not having it in music class. Like first of all, I mean I have to like explain it, but I obviously don't want to like get too personal and whatnot because I want the confidentiality of my teachers and everything. But I'll describe the situation in my music class. There are basically two classes that are happening. There's a band, and then there's a production side. Production side is about
Yeah.
like composing your own music, right? And I joined because if I'm not if I'm being honest, I haven't really enjoyed playing, like more specifically, not enjoyed playing like in that band in that environment. I really do miss like my elementary school environment. Uh,
Oh,
that was a
yeah.
good band class. You know what I mean.
Good old days. Yeah, good old days.
Absolutely. Yeah. Completely different teachers. You could tell the like I can tell the difference in the teachers. All right. Not to take a hit on my music teacher, right? Because obviously I do like my music teacher, but again, for me, match for me, right? That's what I would consider my like a good teacher, right? Is anyways, we can't really say the names, but if my elementary school music teacher is listening, big shout out. But yeah, I just
Yes.
I
You
didn't
know who
like
you are.
playing. I didn't like playing in that environment. And I was like, okay, well, I still want to do music because music is a big hobby of mine. Why not produce beats? Right? Sounds interesting. But I've just like I've been asked to play and I want to be nice and say yes to play. But sometimes my kindness or my to be nice just came and hit me. Like, you know what I mean? In the long run, it just ended up being like a terrible decision. And it's almost like now I'm expected to play, which I do not appreciate. Maybe I need to communicate it better, but it's just like it's almost like I'm just being rude to say no, but also like at what point can I draw the line and say, hey, like I really don't want to do this. I don't appreciate it. Like I just want again, it could be like my fault that I'm not communicating it right, but like I don't appreciate that. I joined the class to have fun, and I'm basically having to be stretched out and do other things. I'm getting on to a tangent, but basically to summarize, I'm just not enjoying it at all and not having a good experience. And going back to what I said earlier, like that's what I would consider a waste of time, right? I'm not getting anywhere, right? My goal for the class was okay, I'm going to learn how to produce, right? But I'm not going to lie, I've learned how to produce far faster on my own than taking the class, to the point where I like literally could say if I dropped the class, I would still get further. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
for
again,
sure.
that's also our like who we are as people, right? Being able to self teach ourselves is like a skill that we've acquired. And it's not like we're born with it, but we've just like we've had to learn how to learn on our own because we haven't been able to be taught, right? I
Yeah.
definitely like if you want to explain like your experiences with business, right? And talk about your business, like business classes, like just talk a bit like how much have you really been taught about business? You know what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, so I started taking, I mean, ever since grade nine, I just started taking introduction to business and whatnot. But my biggest highlight today was like by far from my high school experience was this was actually last year, so this is pretty early on. But I took a entrepreneurship class. It was titled Entrepreneurship the Venture, and the teacher that I had was, he was nice, but he just did not teach well. All he did was just hand out work. He just sit at his office, do or at his desk, just do whatever. Who knows? But basically, he just gave out a bunch of work, and he didn't really truly teach us anything. He just gave us work from the curriculum, and I literally learned nothing. Although I got a really high grade, I got a 96. Trying to brag or anything, but although I got a really high grade, it just felt like I didn't learn much because the teacher himself didn't do anything to, get that learning from. And also going back to the point is the truth be told is that not everyone just is known to be good at school. People learn different. That's why people go off into trades. Trade people obviously good with their hands, they're, the physical labor and stuff. And they go into trade school to get well over six figures. People like plumbers, electricians, they're killing it. They're getting like six figures, because they learn differently. So they go into these different careers, and instead of they're not, I guess you wouldn't call them too academic, but they're just good with their hands. They got golden hands, as they would say. So they go into the careers that fit them like that. So I guess you got to determine how you yourself you learn. You can't just pick a career off of that. But what I would say is that there are some pros to school, and I will say this: if you're trying to be something academic and legal, like lawyer, engineer, doctor, then go ahead. You need school for this. Like there's basically no other way to do this. But if you're planning on doing anything else that I guess involves, it could be something creative or just like I said before, trade school. School really isn't necessary. You could do it on your own. You could go into partnerships. You could learn from a mentor. It all is experience and knowledge, and you can really do it truly.
And I'll say like obviously I don't want my doctor to not have a doctor degree, right? A
Yeah,
doctorate or PhD or whatever. But also I will say like even if you are engineer, lawyer, etc., that you need a degree, you still need a mentor. You know what I mean? You still need people, which we're going to talk about networking soon as well. But you still need people like that in your life, and you still need to be
yeah,
learning outside of school, right?
yeah. Basically, how I perceive it is, if you're looking for a mentor or just a teacher to teach you things that you truly want to know, you got to picture someone who is at the level you would want to be in, like, let's say a timeline of 5 years or something. You just take someone that you'd like, that you think is at the position that you want to be in the future, and you just learn from them. That's all where that information comes from. And that will truly help you because obviously they teach you what they know and you're trying to become that person. So it kind of helps things out.
Absolutely. And the thing is, they need to be doing it, right? They're getting hands-on experience, which we can talk. Obviously, we're going into the field of business and we are studying the field of business at the moment as well, right? But the big thing is when we're getting taught in school, I mean, there's a chance this person has worked for a company and been like, for say, an entrepreneur, right? Or
Yeah.
they've been an entrepreneur, but really most of it
But
is
let's,
just so
yeah,
theory based, but it's like it's almost just like it's fake. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And a lot
like
of the yeah,
let's be honest, all those business teachers, they obviously, they teach by the curriculum. They obviously, they bring out, I guess, the fundamentals and stuff. But what percentage of those business teachers actually had a business and experienced themselves? I promise you, if their business was successful, they would never be a teacher in the first place. So, like, what is this? You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
And
It's like
like
if they had a business that actually worked out, they could obviously come in and explain, you know, their experiences, what happened, failures, and stuff like that. But if they never had a business to start off with, where can they teach the experience from, which is probably the most important knowledge you could ever have, experience from others. Smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. You gotta implement that in your life. I'm telling you, it's crazy, man.
absolutely. But the thing is obviously we know they're high school teachers, right? And we know high school level is more fundamental. But I mean, even in general, like even if I'm going to university, right? I'm sure some university professors are like I can definitely see like there have been like for example UBC, I know there are a couple, right? But just in general, it doesn't even just go for business, but just in general, like they always talk about okay, find your career paths and things like that too, right? But it's like how are you able, again, this is through the lens of high school, right? Because we haven't been to university yet or college yet, right? But really how can we just choose like careers or things like that without even like having someone to speak from that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because I know like a
yeah,
whole big part of business, like at least when we were taking it, right? Like either at NHS or my school right now, was all about research business careers, right? Research business careers. And the crazy thing too was like I would never heard entrepreneurship come up. Rarely, very rarely did I hear about entrepreneurship come up. It was always like, oh, an accountant, financial analyst, right? Like I rarely heard of like entrepreneurship and I really just I didn't really understand like why it was so theory based at all. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't understand. Like, I'm coming into school, I'm sitting down, and I'm getting basically taught like things that, I mean, you can call it fundamentals if you want, but I really don't think like all of it, all of it was always going to be like actually realistic. You know what I mean? Even like the samples of like when we were doing supply and demand, like I understand that is basic, but really like I'm trying to remember because it's 3 years ago, but a lot of the examples we were given were just so random to the point where it was just like I don't even think like this is realistic at that point. And I understand you're trying to use that because it might work better for the explanation, but in my personal opinion, I was just completely confused, right? It helps so much when I'm given an example that is actually realistic, even if it's harder. even if it's harder to understand, the fact that it's realistic and it's happening in our own world, my mind is just able to make that connection and see the logistics of it, and it clicks in my head. That's just how I personally work. The same thing with math, right? When I'm given these like the word problems and they're just I can't really see the logistics of it happening, it just doesn't make sense. Again, that's just me personally.
Yeah, I mean,
Big rant. Big rant.
no, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, personally, I feel like even the people that you are trying to, educate and teach, I feel like they would personally learn better from people that have had the experience and obviously had that, experience of the career they want to personally be in and not just spew knowledge on the curriculum and what, like, I guess, like, the fundamentals are supposed to be. So I feel like the best teacher is just, again, somebody who you would imagine you would imagine your future self to be number one. Number two, who actually had experience in the field that you want, not just a teacher that teaches the curriculum on what that career is really about. So I feel that's personally really important, super important.
Not even just important, it's basically essential. Like that's how you should be taught. You know what I mean? And again, obviously we're not in university. I'm applying. Oleg has chosen not to, and that's completely fine. I think a big thing too is like just because you don't go to a higher level of education does not mean you're not educated, right? Doesn't mean you're not smart. I feel like a lot of people who have a degree like to look down. Like, how essential is a cashier to our economy, right? Still very essential. Like, minimum wage jobs are essential. Think about it. You wouldn't get McDonald's,
Yeah,
you wouldn't get any fast food. No one would be cleaning. No one would be doing
yeah,
any
yeah,
any customer service at all. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And people like to go and say like, no, these people's jobs can get replaced with machines. Okay, so why hasn't it been? If it's that easy, you know what I mean? I still see cashiers. I still see, even though we have self checkout, I still see cashiers. You know what I mean? There always needs to be someone like still on the floor restocking or something. I don't see a machine just automatically restocking everything. You know what I mean?
yeah. So yeah, the premise is every job is important in its own way, but obviously you shouldn't consider this as like a long-term job.
Mhm.
I bet you 80% of these people are working it as like a part-time job or just, just working at the moment, like just for simply for money,
Yeah,
you
of
know?
course, because obviously you can't
So
make a living on it.
yeah. No, like it's crazy though, because like the average yearly pay for people in Ontario is like 50 grand or something. And after tax, it goes what to like what's after tax?
Probably
How much you
38,
possibly get taxed?
probably
Yeah, so
38,
about 38.
40. I don't think
It's
it's in a
such
lower
such
tax
a
bracket.
such a little amount. And especially with inflation prices going through the roof, you're gonna be living paycheck to paycheck for the rest of your lives, man. Like it's crazy, man.
I'm just gonna wrap up just because this is gonna go to part two. But I think just to wrap everything up about school. Look, we're 17. I'll be 18 in April, but look, we can only talk in the perspective that we've had. And to people who disagree, I think that's perfectly fine to disagree with what we've said.
Yeah.
You,
Healthy debates, healthy debate, yeah,
yeah,
for
you
sure.
should always have your point of view. And look, people who are older than us have experienced more, and that's true. People at university could definitely change their mind and say, no, I've had a good experience in university. But I just want to say it's so important to listen to both sides of the story. And it's especially important to listen to the student because if you don't listen to us, nothing changes. And I've always said this like, how does innovation happen if there's no change in the education system, right? Someone who's learning the exact same things as us in 20 years, how are they expected to go into the world and change the world how the world is then? Like, if you look, the biggest innovators, I mean, when you look at all the big companies, like a lot of them, yeah, they might have a degree, but a lot of them have dropped out and started really big things or have had like, I don't know, they've had a degree, but still had the ability to be creative outside, which school doesn't really endorse. You know what I mean? You have to
Yes, for
almost
sure.
just get away from it to see
Mm.
basically see the world differently, right? I feel like school is so focused on creating employees. That's why you can't learn business, you can't learn entrepreneurship. Like
Yeah, it
it's
sucks all
almost
the creativity out of you and tries to force this agenda on you and how to be a worker and just slave away, retire at 65, and then boom, you're in the
absolutely.
grave, 6 feet deep. And I think the main premise of this is to just consider all your options. Obviously, yeah, consider all your options and just think about what truly is good for you. Try and get both perspectives of the story. Let's say somebody who's successful without a degree and someone successful with a degree. So take both of those perspectives and just try to make it out into what you truly think is right for you. Because there's always different learners, so people are going to learn differently.
Alrighty. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in part two.